in the second joke that you received with the message of going home.
That was the first one.
That was the first joke. Well, that joke, I mean, do you think that's a sentiment that a lot of non-Asians in England feel?
Well, it's not right. I'm a British Asian. I was British being the definitive word. I was born here. So when they say go home, where's home?
Right.
My home is West Midlands. I was born here. I was raised here. I don't consider anywhere else my home. This is where I identify myself with. This is
so are you British first?
I'm British, yeah. I am fully British. I personally consider myself as, somebody who could be as British as a white person. It doesn't make any difference if you're white, if you're Asian. If you're born here, you're brought up here, this is your home. Who is anybody to tell you to go home when this is where you come from?
I'm clearly not from the UK, as you can tell by my accent. However, I have noticed that in the UK, Asians tend to hang out with other Asians. And even more specifically than that, if you're Pakistani, you'll only hang out with Pakistanis. If you're Hindu Punjabi, you'll only hang out with Hindu Punjabi. If you're Sikh, you'll only hang out with Sikh. Are we doing anything to really...
That's a very judgmental comment.
Well, it's the truth, though.
I mean, you'll find not necessarily.
It's not just my experience with this.
Yeah.
It's groups. We have these societies at the university here, where you have a Pakistani society, you have an Indian society, you have a Muslim society, you have a Sikh. Why? Why, if we are already such a small minority, why even break it down further?
But that I think Alma said before, he's against the word ethnic. I'm not against that word. I'm against the word minority.
You can call it whatever you want to. You don't have to call it minority. You can call it car. You can use another word for it. The fact is that we are a small minority.
I totally agree with you. I think we're a lot to blame that we do huddle into our little groups. But we can't just say to people, why are you doing that? We can't just say you guys are just separating yourselves from the rest of society. You're just associating yourselves with each other. You're not integrating with anybody else. We can't say that to those people because they're doing that for a reason. They're doing that because they're identifying with somebody else. There's security in numbers. They're in a Sikh society or a Hindu society, Punjabi society, whatever, because they're embracing something that they've got common. Like any kind of society is something that you express a commonality with another person. So in that sense, you are coming together in a common interest. The National Rifle Association in America is a good example of that. People all express the same view towards guns and stuff. It's exactly the same thing.
Right.
I don't think they necessarily separate themselves, but that's a society. Within schools, you have subcultures. You have people who are, let's say I remember in my school there's a huge Asian population.
Right.
Everybody used to always hang together. They never really went to with any other kind of group. And I think that's wrong because, firstly, you are,
well, you're isolating yourself.
You're isolating your experiences.
Yeah.
You're not being allowed to mingle with other people. You're not getting the experience.
It's not even
learning from somebody else, learning about somebody else's culture, because in the real world, your life is not just going to be with Asians, it's going to be with the whole of society.
Yeah, I agree with your point, but this is where you were talking about segregation and all that lot here. When you grow up as a child in a school where, you see violence if you try and speak to somebody else, like who's not Asian, especially in my school, it was all Pakistanis, there was no other culture, religion, it was Pakistanis and whites, and that's all it was. And I didn't really have a choice. I've never been against it. If I try to, mix myself with the white people, it wouldn't be, it would be very hard. It would be very hard for me.
But don't you think it's up to the school to put something in place that allows the two communities to come together?
Yeah, I agree with you. But I agree.
So you're basically, the bottom line is that the reason there's segregation is because it was the only option.
It's the only option. I mean, I did get beaten up a few times for it, and that is my personal experience. But I'm not gone in, and said we should always stick to one side. Yeah. I think it's very important that we should mix, but I'm saying that a lot of communities don't have a choice. And you say that they all live in Asian communities and whatnot, but if they try to move into a white area and few came at the same time, what makes you think that the white areas wouldn't run? Because I saw a documentary a couple of years ago. It was called White Fright, and it was on BBC as well, and it was showing in Blackburn, which is not far from myself, that a lot of white communities were like moving out because there was Asian families moving in the area. So there's two sides to the argument.
I don't want to do this, but we're going to have to leave it for now, and we'll be back after this short break. Hi, Hi, welcome back. You're watching Broken Silence. I'm Sanyya Gardez. And the issue at hand is racism. Joining me now is Dal DeRoche, a blogger, and Altaf Hussain Qazi from the Birmingham City Council. Welcome to the program, guys. Dal, tell us a little bit about your blog.
I have a personal blog that I write. It's about ethnicity and race, just exploring identity. It's a personal blog of mine, and it's something that I started writing because I just felt the need to express my own views about my own identity. And
what are your own views about?
Well, that's quite a complex area. I mean, I suppose I am a number of things. First of all, I'm a British person, and I'm also Indian. I'm a Sikh. You know, I'm male. I'm plenty of different things.
How about in just terms of race? Just in terms of racism, I mean, what's your personal identity with that?
The way that I would describe myself is that I'm a human being, first of all, and then secondly, I'm a British person, and my religion is that I'm a Sikh.
So you're part of the human race, that's that.
That's right.
Altaf, how do you feel about the issue of racism, and how much progress do you think we've actually made?
I think we've made some progress, and I think the progress we've made should be, documented and is documented, and we should actually look back at it with some kind of joy and happiness in terms of what we've achieved in the last 40 years, because we have achieved a significant amount, but there's still a lot of work to be done in respect to the racism that I think is still inherent within larger organizations and institutions.
Why do you think that there is that inherent racism still there?
I think it's become more acute in the way that it's actually delivered. That now, if you give you an example through HR, if you were to apply for a job, there may be some inherent racism from those on the panel, but they can now justify it and find a method of justification, which means that the racism doesn't come out so much.
So it's just more subtle, but still there.
It's more subtle. I think if you look at the police force, that's one of the most key areas to look at. If you look at Tariq Ghafoor, and I may actually say something slightly racist here, who some Muslims or some British Asians may consider to be somewhat of a bounty, which is defined as brown on the outside and nice and white on the inside, which is quite a racist term when we actually look at it ourselves. But if you look at his history, he for 40 years he was part of the elite within the country, and after 40 years dedicated time to the police force, he actually called it institutionally
Well, there's
racist.
actually a recent study which studied South Asians from the under the age of 34, and it showed that 38% of those didn't feel British at all. And they felt that in order to be British, they had to be a coconut, brown on the outside and white on the inside.
I don't think that's true. I think it's all a personal view, and it's what you feel that you are. I was born and bred in this country. I've been raised here. I've been educated here. So there's no reason why I shouldn't say that I'm not British. I'm a number of things, like I said earlier. I have got an Indian heritage, but first of all, I would say I'm British, and I'm proud to be British. I'm glad that I possess a dual heritage, and I feel blessed that I've got Eastern values as well as Western values, and I can use them appropriately in my day-to-day life.
Have you ever been the target of racism?
I have before, yeah. And the word that nobody has used yet is the term Paki. I was called a Paki, probably the last time I was called a Paki, I was probably like 14 years old. Since then, I don't think that I've ever experienced a lot of racism. Maybe I have been discriminated against, but I wouldn't say that it was open against me. But I think it's how you take it. And if someone wants to be racist against me, then that is up to them. But I won't take it in that way. As far as I'm concerned, you seize the moment, you do what you can. You don't play the race card unless you really need to.
I'm going to open this up to both.
I think I'd like to come back on that slightly in terms of being British and what British actually means. I don't think there's actually a definition for what British actually means, and I think that's part of the problem. I think as a Muslim, I'm constantly asked, and working within counter-terrorism, I'm constantly asked, are you a British Muslim, or are you Muslim first or British first? The question itself is nonsensical, because if I gave you a piece of paper here and I asked every one of you to write 4 points of what you thought British was, I'm sure we'd all come up with 4 different points. And the fact remains now that the government is actually defining what being British is, and the definition of what British is. The majority of the world would sign up to that. So it's not really a definition because it's so wide open. So I think that we need to actually look at what we're talking about when we actually say we're British, and what does it actually mean, and what am I signing up for?
I suppose a British person is, technical term is that they are born in the UK, or that they are born in Britain, which gives them the right to claim that they are British.
But we realise that obviously